We also get to engage with experts across those spaces. We also look at defining concepts and even to also kind of put some contemporary context and light to discussions around the built environment space. So today, it's a pleasure to welcome everyone to this knowledge series, this webinar. We'll be discussing about healthy building, healthy people, how designing and assessing for well-being is important to the built environment, and how we can do things correctly. Just to give a background, of course, we know that green building is all about planet, people, and profit. While it's always the good thing for developers at a level to look at the profit side of the divide, it's also good as designers, as also consultants, to also be mindful of the people. That's where we discuss health and well-being of the people. That's where we get to discuss about the interior spaces, what contributes to how people feel, either absenteeism or presenteeism in spaces. How can we be aware? How can we advise our clients? And what can we do either at a surface stage or at an in-depth stage, both either in design and also in operational building. So this afternoon, we have a well-curated panel and persons that had worked over the last decades doing this and teaching this, doing this on project and also engaging stakeholders in this context of healthy building and healthy people. We have one of the persons that we're speaking with us very soon is Jason Artke. Is a member of the IWBI. He's worked for a couple of decades in this space. We get to hear more about him when he gets to speak. Then we also have Omoyemi Olayiwola. She's also on the call. She's also going to be engaging us in the discussion as we step further. Then lastly, we also have Adetokunbo Elenkpe. He is from one of the top facility management company in Nigeria and even globally. We get to also hear more from him when it's time to speak. Just to, as we open this session, just to mention few housekeeping briefs or rule. We will appreciate that everyone should note their questions. You can please just do well to put them. You can type them in the chat box or note them. When it's time for question and answer, we can call you. Either you could ask or still type it. Then if you also have some thoughts or contribution, yes, we don't mind. While it is important we have experts to lead this conversation, we're also mindful of the fact that there are peculiar experiences that can also add to the discussion, that can make it richer or deeper in context. So if you also have some thoughts, please do it. Also drop it in the chat box. Then you can also engage us further. This webinar is being streamed on some of our platforms. You might also do well to check our YouTube page and some of our other platforms if you want to connect live beyond here, or you want to review. You want to view the session after this time, or you want to recommend the session to someone, please do well to also check our platforms. The recording will be there. I think, having said all of this, I want to welcome you once again on behalf of the entire Directorate and Board of Trustee of GBCN. Welcome on board this webinar. So the voice we hear next now is the voice of Jason. Jason, good afternoon from Nigeria. You have the floor.
Hi,
Thank you.
Emmanuel. Thank you so much. Really appreciate the introduction. Good morning from Washington, D.C., and good afternoon to everyone joining us from Nigeria and elsewhere around the world. At IWBI, we host a lot of global events, so we often say good morning, good afternoon, and even good evening. So I hope everybody's enjoying the day. As Emmanuel said, my name is Jason Hartke. I lead external affairs and global advocacy at the International Wellbeing Institute. It is my absolute pleasure and honor to also help welcome you to today's GBCN webinar, so perfectly titled Healthy Buildings, Healthy People. I also want to give a big shout out and a lot of love to GBCN and their entire team, Emmanuel, Usman, everyone for convening this important conversation. I want to particularly recognize GBCN President Dejuma Waniko for his leadership here in Nigeria, but also for his service on the Global Commission on Healthy Indoor Air, where he's supporting a larger global effort to elevate healthy indoor air as a public health priority. So thank you to Juma, and thank you to the entire GBCN team for, again, bringing us together. Look, I don't want to take too much time away from our two outstanding speakers, but I did want to back up just a little bit and offer some additional context for today's conversation. Within the broader sustainability movement, energy, carbon, environmental performance, those receive a lot of attention. And those priorities, as Emmanuel said, are critically important. But sustainability must also account for the people who live, work, they learn, and gather inside of our buildings. Environmental sustainability and human health are not competing priorities, not at all. We know that they are intrinsically linked. And so the very best buildings must and absolutely must advance both. One of the stats that you'll hear a lot from folks who work in healthy buildings, we spend up to 90% of our lives indoors. All of us spend the vast majority of our lives indoors. And that means that buildings are not these passive backdrops to our lives. They are active determinants of our health and our well-being. Buildings influence the air we breathe, the water we drink. They influence how much movement we have during the day. They can determine our exposure to natural light and the quality of electric light. And they shape, how we feel in a building, from our thermal comfort to our acoustic comfort. And they can also expose us or help protect us from harmful materials and pollutants. And all of these conditions can very profoundly affect our physical health, our mental health, our comfort, our concentration, our sleep, and of course, our performance. At IWBI, our mission is to transform health and well-being through a people-first approach to buildings, organizations, and communities. And our principal tool for driving that market transformation is the Well Building Standard. It provides a global leadership benchmark for advancing health and well-being. And what distinguishes Well is its exclusive focus on people. Every concept, every feature within the standard is grounded in scientific evidence and designed to support better health outcomes. For those of you who know Well, we take a comprehensive approach. We have 10 interconnected concepts: air, water, nourishment, light, movement, thermal comfort, sound, materials, mind, and community. I wanted to list them all. But they're very important. Air and water address two of the most fundamental inputs into human health. Again, we know that light, sound, thermal comfort influence everything from sleep to concentration. Materials help us reduce exposure to harmful substances. Movement and nourishment support healthier daily behaviors. So all of these concepts really work in concert. Well works to translate the science in these areas into practical strategies that can be incorporated into the design, the construction, and building operations. And just as importantly, performance verification helps determine whether the building is actually delivering the conditions it was designed to provide. And that matters a whole lot in healthy buildings. We can't just be healthy on paper. Performance must be measurable, verifiable, and sustained. And I just want to very, very briefly, this is my last big point, but I want to underscore that we know this works. There have been multiple studies focused on healthy buildings and specifically on the performance of Well. There was a seminal study just a few years ago that found that Well-certified spaces improved workplace satisfaction by 28%, improved well-being scores by 26%, improved perceived mental health by 10%, and boosted productivity by 10 points. And so those findings really do reinforce the important message that investing in healthier buildings is not simply about creating nicer spaces. It's about delivering measurable benefits to the people who are in those buildings and the organizations they serve. And I think that brings us to the central premise of today's program, that healthy buildings are absolutely critical to helping create healthier people. And so with that, I want to first introduce our first speaker, Yemi Olaiwala. Yemi is an architect, a sustainability leader, a built environment strategist with more than 12 years of experience spanning design, project delivery, research, policy, and industry advocacy. She is the creative lead of Design Spaces by Yemi and serves as executive director of research and innovation at GBCN. She's contributed to the development of Nigeria's nationally determined contributions and serves as vice chairperson of the Standards Organization of Nigeria's Technical Committee on Sustainability in Buildings, Cities, and Communities. And throughout her work, Yemi has focused on translating sustainability from policy and theory into practical, measurable, and scalable solutions for Africa's built environment. Yemi, we are so honored to have you here with us today. Thank you for joining. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Jason, for that very powerful and commendable introduction. And thank you for the introductory part that you put, perspective that you put into this webinar. We sincerely appreciate you joining us from the IW BI this afternoon. And thank you for the fantastic work that you're doing also to contribute to the body of knowledge of buildings that support health and well-being globally. Thank you so much. And good afternoon, everyone. I trust everyone can hear me. Okay, so we'll just get right into it. So I will be speaking during today's webinar on the perspective around design. Like Jason had mentioned, I mean, the various concepts when you begin to look at what the IW BI, the International Well-Building Institute concept is around elder building. Of course, it spoke extensively about air, water, and how, as humans, we spend close to 90% of our time indoors, which is very critical. And I believe that once you're someone who likes to stay indoor like myself, you begin to notice that it's important that you have a very healthy, space to be able to function optimally. Of course, across the world concepts, like Jason had mentioned, you have air, water, fitness, you're looking at nourishment, you're looking at thermal comfort, you're looking at different materials and the various concepts that they represent. But today, for today's webinar, which I will be sharing my slides on, is basically we'll be looking around about 6 areas basically that affect us as designers. Again, I'm coming in as an architect who is designing spaces. And, sometimes as architects, you begin a project and the first thing you're so particular about is how this drawing is just functioning, what kind of facade am I going to have, what is the final outlook that I intend to achieve. But the truth also is that until I went into the area of health and well-being, aside from sustainability as a whole, is the fact that you now begin to look at the intrinsic parts of the building and how it affects your health and well-being. And safe to say that one of the things that I think also drew me to as a certification was the fact that I recall that growing up, my grandma used to go into some spaces and then she just becomes very ill, very sick. I didn't understand it, and then the more that I started to work as an architect and look at buildings and look at materiality, look at the indoor air quality standards and metrics that we have, I begin to realize that yes, buildings contribute a whole lot to our health. And people really just look at buildings from the point of it's just core and shell, it's just a building. No, a building breathes actually. It responds back to you, and what you give it is what it gives back to you. So as architects, we need to look at buildings just beyond the architecture. We need to look at it beyond just doing drawings and doing fanciful designs. You need to look at what is the experience that you intend to achieve. Sometimes as architects, designers, let me say, we overload our buildings with so much tech. Oh, there's automation, there's everything that makes the building so chic and nice. But the things that make people within those spaces have less hospital visits, less sick building syndromes and things like that. We don't place particular attention to them. So like I said, we'll be looking at how buildings affect our health and how, our buildings can also be an intervention to a healthy pathway, when we occupy. So like I mentioned, we'll be looking at 6 areas: air, heat, light, sound, water, and materials. And we'll take on the concepts from there. So basically, It's health is not just something that, I mean, when we talk about health, somebody say, oh, but it's not a healthcare building, it's not a hospital. Why do I need to design, healthy? It's not a laboratory, it's not buildings that are, but the truth is that for people to function optimally within a space, you need to put their health, in perspective. Now, why is that important? Because the end user of every building infrastructure is a human being. So I mean, we say for the world of tech and AI and robotics and all that, but humans, whether it's an office, whether it's a mixed use building, residential, in fact, industry, whatever type of building it is, humans would always work in those buildings. They will function in those buildings, and those buildings need to be consciously designed for them. So we need to have health in the, at the back of our mind as a design performance requirement, just as you're going to have ventilation. For those of us in Nigeria, when we're looking at taking our drawings for building approval, he has to be cross ventilated. He has to be this, the headroom has to be this high. You cannot exceed this particular level of headroom, for zoning. So it's something that is also a design requirement. What is the health? What are the health parameters that I'm looking at within my building? So you begin to look at it and say, what? Why I'm looking at this? What are the things that, again, you look at it from the point of whether you're doing an upgrade or whether you're doing a new build. So sometimes, I mean, like I put it in my in the slide to say, a healthy building is not one with more technology, it's just fewer unmanaged risks. So what can you prevent? So you're looking at your design. Okay, what are the things that I can use locally that are available to me that can prevent exposure to pollutants? I mean, it's been seen extensively. And again, the more I go into spaces now, I begin to just look at materiality of, most of the finishes that we have. You have carpets that give off VOC gases. You have, fumes, exhaust from generators coming into your space because you have to open your windows. You have, excessive heat, and on the other side, on the flip side, you're trying to balance it with air condition that is, giving off it's trapped air, so you're not able to really breathe in complete clean air, as it were. So there's so many hazardous substances, so you need to look at what kind of paints am I using, what kind of finishing am I using. Then you also need to look at the part that, how does my building support the comfort, my comfort, what I am in inside of the building. How do I sleep? How do I work? How do I function? What's my social well-being? Is it a building that when I just get into it, I'm just very slack, I'm not as active as I would be? For us also as designers, we need to always, include for and design for different body types. Sometimes you need to understand that, our bodies function differently. For some people, they can withstand so much cold. Some people, they are very insensitive to. So you need to look at the extremes. Again, what are you doing as a designer to be able to implement some of those things? These are what we will be looking at this afternoon. So, like I said, a few things to take of notes is that you need to know that, I mean, your performance has to go from your design. So when you're doing green buildings and you want to start, I mean, there's a part where all the stakeholders will come together. You begin to look at it. What are you doing? So it needs to be locked in from the, just from the beginning. As you're bringing in your consultants, if you're working on the side of health and well-being, you need to be able to come in early, even if, as a client, to be able to say, oh, I want my building to prioritize this. I want my building to prioritize health. I want it to happen so early. So in design, you're already putting in some of all those measures to be able to ensure that you have what it takes. You're looking at your site, how are you positioning? Again, these are just basic design metrics. You're looking at positioning, orientation on site, in terms of how the building is sited, how wind affects my building. On the site where I have wind, am I utilizing the windows? How am I doing the sun shading in order to prevent glare? Talking about thermal comfort when you're in the building. You're looking at the form, what kind of building form do I have, in order to ensure that when I am in it, I'm able to maximize my daylight and airflow as much as possible. I've spoken about glare, the space. How does the space relate with contaminants when people come from outside into my space? Do not forget that they carry a lot of contaminants as they go along. So how am I zoning in my design so that I know that when people come into my inner space, there's a lot of contaminants, particularly in the shoes, particularly on the clothes, that there's some level of let's say filtration that will have been done before they come into my space. Systems for HVAC, I mean, particularly you're looking at that point for indoor air quality. And then by the time you're going to the point where you commission the building and you hand it over, you know that it is safe for you. So it's not just, I've done my building, I need to make it healthy. No, you start from the beginning, and it's not just going to be basically specifications. There's so many options that you can begin to implement as you go on in your building. So for air, like I said, for air, it's usually, how does air come into my space? So these are things that I'd said earlier. From outside, people are coming from outside. So the different levels of pollution when people are outside, And again, I'm going to be very case specific. In Nigeria, our roads are dirty. There's so much pollutants, even the ones that you cannot see, and then the ones that you can see. There's dirty water on the road. There's overflowing drainage. There's refuse on the road. So there's so much contaminant on you, even as a human already. Now you have to now come, as a designer, to look at it that, okay, someone were coming from outside. I'm designing a commercial building. For some people in design, they will have a vestibule, for instance, where they have a bit of what's the word, controlled air pressure that's able to what's the word now, to sterilize, so to say, your clothing and everything that you wear before you go into another space. Typical case example would be what some Asian homes do. When you go into them, they already have, some don't even allow you to wear your shoes in. So those are healthy practices, just simple things, but they have far-reaching effect. They don't allow you to wear your shoes in because your shoe has picked in a lot of things, and you just wear them from outside. You wear them into your office, from office you wear them into your homes, and then into your bedrooms. So you need to ensure that your occupied zone, as much as possible, has clean air. So you separate parking area from your parking area, I mean, where your generators will be, where the kitchen, where you have all the dirty activities. And for in some cases where you have storage for chemicals and hazardous material, you want to make sure that those pathways are cleared off, and then you're able to also identify where your clean air zone is, and then move clean air into those spaces, particularly your living areas, your sleeping area, your work area, places where you spend a lot of time. One of the measures that can be incorporated would be to have filters. Some people have filters, some people have devices called humidifiers, just to help to balance some of all this outdoor air quality that is very unreliable. For people that live in places that there's a lot of manufacturing, you want to be able to ensure that you're able to keep exhaust out, smoke out, not that when you open your door, all the exhaust coming. So there needs to be balance. And in terms of looking at it as a designer, you need to be able to think through, how am I siting? I mean, I mentioned sites before. How am I siting my building? This building is case specific. It's in an industrial area or it's in a noisy area. What am I doing to be able to, implement? So you don't want your generator areas, for instance, to be close to where you have windows. You want to ensure that your kitchen and toilets have effective extraction for smell and for pollutants. They're able to get rid of them very quickly. And you want to ensure that your air conditioning, there are people who cannot live without air conditioning. You want to ensure that they have healthy filters. I mean, I think the HEPA filters now, HEPA filters that are installed in your air conditioner, your ventilation system, so that it can filter out the bad air, and of course ensure that you have clean air all the way. Another thing will be thermal comfort. Like I said, temperature levels. There's the part where you go into a space and it's inhabitable. So most people will say, how do you recognize that a building is clean or is sustainable when I go into it? the first thing you should be looking at is not to say, oh, this building is certified well AP, or certified by the International Well Building Institute, has having a credential. That should not even be the first thing you should look out for. The first thing you should look out for is how much the building is habitable. What are the things that I can do inside of that building that makes me comfortable per time? And air quality is very, very much connected to our thermal comfort within any space. So it's not just something that you have to think of it. Okay, so how am I going to balance the thermal comfort? Okay, maybe when I'm inside of this room, I'll be using my cardigan, or I have to use more protective clothing, thicker clothing. It has to be balanced across the use of the building. So we need to ensure that thermal comfort is not just based on your thought as an individual, particularly if you're designing or building for multiple users. You need to ensure that you're looking at temperature parameters, like I said, the kind of airspeed. If I open my windows, what are the possible airspeed or airflow levels? What are the kind of feeling that you get when you wear thick clothing, like I said, light clothing, radiant heat parameters, and to ensure that you have all of those in place. Now, for Nigeria, that is very hot, humid, except for the fact that we have a bit of rains that can, that wants to sweep us all away. But, and in this kind of environment, parameters to include in your design, you're looking at shaded openings, air conditioners, you're looking at moisture, aware cooling, and of course, control. You need to be able to control because, like I said, the air temperature needs to be varied. Next would be lighting. I think this I've already mentioned when we talk about, you have cross ventilation and things like that. You need to be able to go into your space, and when power goes off, the first thing you are looking for is not to put on the generator, and it does not also mean that the building needs to be too bright. Some people think that daylight equates brightness. No, it just needs to be comfortable lighting in order to ensure that at whatever work plane in which you're seated or you're working, you have the most optimized lighting levels wherever you are. So as architects, as designers, you want to ensure that you orientate your buildings for maximum exposure. You've done calculations and simulations to ensure that, again, your buildings are well sited, where the external shades need to be, where you need to have blinds internally in order to control glare. And then you also need to ensure different light levels per time within the day in order to allow for maximum comfort. So, of course, as designers, whether you're an interior designer or an architect, or whatever you are, even a quantity surveyor or a building construction professional, what you're looking at is not just the illumination level of the light. It needs to be comfortable. It needs to be balanced. So per time when you're in it, you know that you're getting the best daylighting, because it will support your alertness. It will support your mood. Sometimes you get into a space and the lighting level is very poor and your mood is just down. And, it also needs to be connected to the indoor-outdoor connection because of light. Of course, you have daylight and then you have the artificial lighting on the inside. So you need to be able to ensure that your design maximizes that. For the acoustics, of course, sound, I mentioned that when I was talking about here, the different buffers which you need to consider. There's the noisy zone, and then there has to be the buffer before you get into your quiet zones. So even when you're doing an office building, or your building is right smack by the bus park, you need to be sure that the transition works effectively, where you're able to optimize or minimize external and external noise from your interiors, and ensure that you have buffer zones. You have zones where, especially when you're designing for, very noisy areas and noisy environment. Of course, as a design parameter, some people would want to incorporate, different levels of glazing, different levels of insulation to be able to ensure that they achieve maximum sound levels, within their spaces. You want to isolate your pump rooms and all of those noisy rooms and keep them far away from areas where you do a lot of focus, a lot of reading, a lot of sleeping, a lot of learning. So there are different levels, of course, as you design, and these are things that you need to put in mind. It's not that you now say, oh, let's put a lift or a pump room beside the bedroom, and then later when it starts to make noise, you now say, let's slap it, or let's just cover it with insulation. It needs to be thought through right from the design phase. So you want to ensure that before you think of insulation, ensure that your acoustic comfort starts with your plan, your design, how you're doing it and how you're implementing. Quickly to move on, the next will be water. Of course, like Jason had mentioned, air and water take a lot of priority because it's what people use extensively when you're in the building. I mean, water quality, the moisture control, I mean, you cannot take that away. Some people might even live with sound and live with, some of those other parameters. But you want to ensure that the water you use within your building is from a safe source. It's stored very well, and I mean, the distribution is also is very much optimized. For water, people take a lot of bad water or polluted water, and you are not even sure what you're taking because you don't even know where the water source comes from. So for you as a designer, you need to ensure what are the water supply mechanisms that I'm incorporating in my design extensively. Even if I'm filtering my water, what kind of filters am I using? Because there are filters as well that have poisonous compounds in them that you need to watch out for, and you need to ensure that they are not, I mean, there are compounds in them that if you don't read actively, they also contribute, more than it's needed in terms of filtration. So you need to look at all of those things. You need to detail how your water supply, how your supply chain moves from the point of production or access supply of water to site to where it's being used by the end user. You need to ensure that you have that. I think finally on that note will be materials. How are the buildings materials interacting? I think this is the one that gets me excited more often, aside from more air and water, because materiality, we like to have very fancy interiors. We like to have couches and fabrics and all of that within the space. Too much the plastic materials, the all the cladding materials, different materials doing different things, adhesive sealants, like I said, carpet, and everything is giving off different gas. So if you were going to take a test now to measure the air quality within your space, I can bet us in this part of the world, most of our buildings will fail because you will realize that they are emitting one, hazardous substance or the other. The health intent of some of them are not really good, but because we do not check also, and then as designers we're not specifying, we just feel that everything is fine and we can use it, then we just allow it go. Some paints, some coatings should not be used internally, but we just specify and say, oh, because my friends used this particular brand, oh, it's very nice and I like the color, so I must use the same thing. But have you checked the kind of compounds in them? So when you're building for health, you need to check specifications. You need to check the level of the compound. You need to read, you need to study. Some of the materials you want to go for will particularly be certified by different agencies that have gone, and they have data sheets for you to be able to confirm that these are clean products and they do not give off gases or contribute negatively to your health. I mean, one of the symptoms or one of the evidence of that, like I said, is that you have people just have this sick building syndrome. You go into the building and you're just lethargic, your energy levels are just low, you're wondering what happened, but I wasn't sick when I left the house. Why is this happening? I mean, just to go on, I know we'll take a bit of questions and answers. I think I'll stop here for now, and then we can come back to any other questions and answers that we may have. Thank you.
Right.
Yeah,
Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, should I jump in?
Yes, you can briefly,
Okay.
Justin. Thank you.
Thank you, Yemi. That was fantastic. Such an excellent look into how health can be woven into the design process. I think we have time for one quick question before we go to the next speaker. But one of the things that you said that I think really resonates with me is how health, should be central to design performance. And then the other aspect of your talk that again, really, I think jumped out at me is how important it is to make some of these decisions early. There's nobody like architects and designers who understand the power of integrated design, kind of pulling from all these different values that we want to make sure are represented in our buildings. The question I wanted to ask is, and I think you're in such a great position to see how this works in practice is, we have these ambitions related to sustainability, energy efficiency, for example. And we know that some of the strategies that we may deploy for energy efficiency are going to have an effect on what we do for indoor air quality, for thermal comfort, and these other health aspects that you just talked about. Can you talk a little bit about how the role of the designer to make sure that we can stay bullish and ambitious on both the sustainability values, i.e., energy efficiency, and health, and how they can work together?
Okay, thank you, Jason. So definitely, what I would say is that for a sustainable building and the building that prioritizes health and well-being, they need to be in sync now, because if you're looking at maybe the lower levels of sustainability parameters, let's say you're just going for energy efficiency, water efficiency, materiality, this also come, they align with what we had said about air, water, sound, and different concepts as it pertains to well. Now, in terms of design, you've incorporated, you have the energy efficient measures both with your building carcass, the framework, and all of that. One thing to put in mind is to ensure that from the get-go, which you also reiterated, it's design performance. So it needs to be harmonized, because a building that is sustainable can also prioritize health and well-being. So I'll give you an example. There's a project we did one time that the building in itself wasn't sustainable. It was just built as a traditional commercial building. But then, there was a company who was going to use some of the spaces in there, and they wanted it to be sustainable. So the case in point now had to be that we now had to start implementing a lot of things to prioritize energy efficiency, to prioritize indoor air quality. And so for that, with your energy efficiency, for instance, you're looking at what kind of ventilation systems am I using? And I mentioned it about the filters, the air filtration system, what kind of water treatment systems are we putting in place from a design point of view? Because you're not just looking at energy. What is energy if some of the features of the buildings do not make the buildings, does not contribute to the indoor air quality? And then again, there are ways to carry out a lot of commission tests on your building to be able to ensure that I'm prioritizing the best optimal quality, not just for indoor water as well, which would also help my building to be sustainable. I'm prioritizing materials. Like I said, I'm checking the data sheet, I'm checking the specification, I'm ensuring that my buildings are secure, the cooling is active. So health is not just going to be like an add-on, basically. It's like a layer that you're adding on top of your, sustainability parameters. So it's like a coating or like a icing on the cake to say, you know what, I have my cake, but this is the icing. I want it to be healthy. I want the materials to speak for what it has been designed for, and I want it to be the best possible.
I love the analogy, and this is the one situation where we can have our cake and eat it too, right? We can do both together. So fantastic. There's a couple of good questions coming in through the Q&A, so I really appreciate that. If folks can continue to send those in, we'll make sure to get those when we have a chance to both of our speakers have jumped in here. Some really good questions related to well too that I think I can address. But I want to make sure that we have full time for our second speaker before we come back to the group for questions. Our second speaker is Adedakumbo Alempe, Facility Management Executive at Broll Property Services, Nigeria. Adedakumbo, who also happens to be an architect, is a seasoned facility management and project management professional with more than 22 years of experience across the oil and gas, banking, telecommunications, and corporate real estate sector. He's managed major accounts that include Shell Petroleum Development Company, the Central Bank of Nigeria, and MTN, and he currently oversees more than 25 operational sites across Nigeria. His expertise spans facility and project management, architecture, contract administration, sustainability, and risk management. He is a certified project management professional and facility management professional, and an Archon registered architect and an IFMA instructor. Thank you so much, Adekumbo, for being here. Please take it away. Or you're on mute. Just making sure you're able to share your presentation.
Okay,
There you
so
go.
yes, you can share from your end if you have it, please.
Okay, Emmanuel, are you able to pull it up? Pull up the presentation.
Okay, no, let me check just 1 minute.
Okay.
Are you talking about you can't do it from there?
I'm having difficulty loading it up. If you can share from your end, that would be nice.
Let me check. Just give me 30 seconds.
In the meantime, I just want to address a couple of the questions that have come in via the chat about well and Yemi, if you want to jump in as it relates to the question about well adoption in Africa, please do. But I think Rose asked a really good question about, what might be the best approach to thinking about well. And, we've actually done a lot of collaboration with the EDGE program. And so we're starting to see more projects that are pursuing EDGE certification also pursue well in some capacity. So it may be the well's full certification, or it may be one of our well ratings, like the well health safety rating or the well performance rating or the health equity rating. And so those are actually, as Rose is kind of suggesting, those are actually really good, entry-level ways to jump into healthy buildings and make sure that you're utilizing a certification system. All right, without further ado, Adekumbo, thank you so much.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for the opportunity given to me to present this topic to you. And I also want to thank Jason and Yemi for even making the job a lot easier for me, having set the pace already. Okay, so the topic for today will be, how do we keep a building healthy once people move in? That is, keeping a building healthy post-occupancy. I am Adekumbo Elenkpe, and I work for Broad Property Services Limited. Okay, next slide, please. Okay. So, really allow me start this presentation with a very crucial question, which is, what makes a building healthy post-occupancy? Is it the architectural design, like Yemi just talked about? Is it the construction quality of the building? Is it the HVAC system in the building? Is it cleanliness of the building? Or is it the building occupants, the people that use the building? The answer to this question is all of the above. All of the above. All the five sets of people set of items that were mentioned will work together collectively to make the building a healthy one. All these factors need to work together continuously. Building health is not just a one-time achievement. Once people move into a building, it becomes a living environment. And as they begin to generate heat, they generate moisture, they generate carbon dioxide, they generate dust, and even waste every day. This makes it very difficult to keep the building the way it was when it was built. So you need FM to now come in to monitor and to manage this building. And that is why the work of FM is continuous. Please, to the next slide, please. So, for proper context, we will divide this section into 6 strategic pillars, starting with operations. We'll look at maintenance, we'll look at cleaning and hygiene, we'll look at controls and BMS, we'll look at monitoring, and we'll look at occupants' behavior. We all know that operation is work done to keep a facility functional as we try to get it to perform its intended use. And this is beyond if the equipment or building is actually on. Rather, it is more of, is it performing the function for which it was designed? Secondly, we'll look at maintenance, which is caring for a building physical assets, your systems, and your structure. It could be preventive maintenance, it could be predictive maintenance, and it could be corrective maintenance. Then the third pillar we'll be looking at is cleaning and hygiene. And this is just beyond dirt and dust removal. It includes disinfection, which promotes occupants' health and well-being. So cleaning in normal context, we just say, oh, we're taking away the dust and the dirt from an environment. But cleaning is actually more than that. The very key area of cleaning is even the disinfection part of it. So looking at the fourth pillar is controls and BMS, which refers to systems that control the building KPIs, like temperatures, humidity, air quality, etc. And this helps to improve occupants' health. So if you're not measuring these KPIs very well, and you're not improving on them, then there's a possibility that people come into the building and they feel unwell. So moving on to the fifth pillar, which is monitoring, which is the continuous monitoring of the building parameters to identify early warning before they become systemic issues and before they become to impact people's health. And finally, we'll look at occupants' behavior. This is very key, occupants' behavior. And these are direct and indirect actions by occupants that affects building systems, with resultant effects on the building occupants' health. So we'll take them one after the other. Please, next slide. So looking at operations, the key systems within a building that you basically want to operate are the HVAC systems, the generator systems, the sewage, lifts and escalators, security and access systems, water supply system, fire protection, and BMS, and all the rest. Like I mentioned, operation is what you do to keep the facility performing the function for which it was meant to do. So building systems should not only be functional, but they should be made safe for occupants to use. These systems must not simply be switched on and left to operate. They require proper operating procedures by competent FMs. You can see that FMs are coming in again, competent personnel, and they need regular reviews. For example, an air conditioning system can be operating but still provide poor indoor air quality. So it's not just if it is on. The idea is it performing the function for which it is meant? So you need to take note of that. And the temperature may feel comfortable, but the building could have high carbon dioxide levels. It could have poor ventilation. It could have high humidity, microbial growths, and unpleasant smells. Okay, so we'll move on to the second strategic pillar, which is maintenance. So for maintenance, a healthy building requires maintenance. It could either be preventive maintenance, it could be predictive maintenance, or corrective maintenance. But we try as much as possible as FMs to limit the kind of maintenance we perform in a building to preventive and predictive. Only in extreme cases, we want to go corrective. Okay, so for example, you need to change HVAC filters according to the condition of the operating environment. So the frequency of changing filters for somewhere along the coastal lane, around the Eco-Atlantic, for example, will be different from the frequency of changing filters on the mainland, where you do not have those contaminants. Okay, and you also need to inspect your assets, inspect electrical panels, inspect your sewages and drainages, etc. And if we bring it back to Nigeria, we'll see that environmental conditions make maintenance particularly important. We'll deal with dust in Nigeria, we'll deal with high humidity, we'll deal with high temperature, we'll deal with power instability, we'll deal with water quality challenges. We even have coastal corrosion challenges along some areas, especially within Lagos. Therefore, Maintenance schedules should be based not only on manufacturers' recommendations, but also on actual building conditions. Okay, so a good facility manager therefore combines manufacturer recommendations. It takes into consideration operations conditions, historical data, as well as inspection results. He put all of these together to be able to design a maintenance strategy. So there's no one cap fits all. He gets into an area, puts all these four factors together, and that gives him the basis for designing a maintenance strategy. Okay, so we'll move on quickly to the third pillar, which is cleaning and hygiene. Cleaning and hygiene. We all know that cleaning is sometimes treated as a housekeeping activity only. People just get into spaces and they just clean. However, this is much more than that. Focus should be placed on pollutant removal rather than just mere dirt removals and masking odors with harsh chemical scents. I've seen situations where cleaners will just come into the restroom. Instead of cleaning the restroom and ensuring that the smell is off, they'll just come, drop chemicals that act as scents to mask the smell. And that is not what it should actually be. Okay? Poor cleaning can contribute to dust accumulation. They can contribute to odors. They can contribute to pest activities, microbial growth, poor indoor air quality, like Yemi spoke about. So particular attention should be given to areas that are often overlooked. There are areas in your building where people never clean because they are hidden areas. Places like HVAC grills and diffusers, ceiling voids, air handling units, carpets, and even toilets. Some hidden areas in toilets, they never clean them. So cleaning should therefore be based on risk and building usage rather than simply following a routine timetable. Okay, so different building types should have different cleaning strategies. For example, a high traffic office or even an hospital or a shopping center or even residential buildings should not have the same cleaning routine. They should not have the same cleaning routine. The facility manager needs to design their cleaning routine based on the activities in these spaces. So we're moving on quickly. We're looking at our fourth pillar, which is controls and building management systems. We all know that modern buildings these days increasingly depends on automations and building systems, which help monitor the building systems like HVAC system, electrical system, the lighting system, water system, fire and life safety systems, indoor air quality, plumbing system, and all the rest. The BMS help to monitor and control the building systems to ensure that they provide buildings with healthy conditions and parameters. So if you don't monitor these systems very well, using your BMS and other controls, you might think that these systems are working, but they are not giving the healthy conditions that are expected of them. So this is two ways. The BMS help you, it opens your eyes to these parameters. Then it is now your duty as a facility manager to now act. That is why we say a BMS is only as good as the data it receives. And the people interpreting the data will need to now pick them up and work on them and see if they can resolve the issues. And that is where competency in facility management comes in. So we'll move on quickly to the fifth pillar, which is monitoring. There's this popular saying that you cannot manage what you do not measure. You cannot manage what you do not measure. So on the flip side, what gets measured can be managed. So continuous monitoring of building KPIs like temperature, humidity, HVAC operations, energy consumptions, equipment alarms, and all the rest is very important, as this provides early warning signs before systemic issues begin to impact occupant health. Effective monitoring helps to provide the buildup of pollutants. It prevents the buildup of pollutants. It prevents stale air. It helps to prevent excessive carbon dioxide levels in the building, which can contribute to headaches. Jason mentioned something like this. Contribute to headaches, it cause fatigue to occupants of the building, poor concentration levels, and even respiratory discomforts that can affect the general health of the building occupants. So we're moving on to the last strategic pillar, which is occupants' behavior. Occupants' behavior. Excellent equipment can still perform badly. They can still perform badly because of how people use them. That is how important occupants' behavior is in this case. You might have all the best, all the state-of-art equipment in the building, but if people use them wrongly, then they will not be able to guarantee health to the occupants of the building. Even a state-of-the-art green building will fail. It will fail if occupants do not play their roles. For example, such buildings could not guarantee health if occupants block the air vents that brings in fresh air and takes out used air from the building. If they are blocked, you end up with high level of carbon dioxide within the building, and you don't know where your illness is coming from. When waste, for example, are not well managed, are not well handled within the building, this could cause situations where people get infected and result to illnesses. Okay, so occupants must understand that they are part of the building operation system. They are part of the system. They don't take themselves away from the building. Therefore, building facility managers should provide simple occupancy education. I like situations where facility manager continuously engage occupants of the building. Tell them if you see anything, report it. It won't take you anything to report any situation you see within the building. Okay? And generally, it has been saying that 65% of indoor environmental issues stem from occupants' actions and inactions. So, facility managers need to continuously be on the necks of building occupants, see them how to handle the equipment, the structures, the systems within the building. So, moving on, we'll just move to the second section of this presentation, which is the common problems in Nigerian buildings. The common problems in Nigerian buildings. We'll start with the problem areas. Then we'll look at the possible cause of these problems, and then finally we'll end with the possible practical measures to be taken to resolve these problems. We'll start with poor indoor air quality. And this could be caused by inadequate ventilations, dirty filters, and poor housekeeping. And the possible practical measures to resolving these issues will be regular HVAC inspections and servicing. Maintenance comes to play here. Filters management, ventilation checks. If you carry out all these checks very well, you will see that your indoor air quality will improve. Okay, so we'll move on to the second problem that is common in Nigeria, which is water leakage and dampness. And the possible cause of this could be leaks from roofs, plumbing systems, HVAC systems, and all the rest. And how do you resolve this? What are the practical measures in resolving these issues? Regular inspections, you respond immediately to water intrusions. You don't allow it stay for too long, because before you know it, it will begin to, the areas will begin to grow mold. I will know how dangerous mold is to human health. Moving on, we look at unreliable power supply. What could be the causes? The causes are poor interruptions and generator operations in Nigeria. And the possible practical measures of this could be maintain your generators so that they are always available for you. They are reliable. Your UPS, your ATS panels, and all critical electrical equipment. Moving on, we'll look at the poor preventive maintenance, which is common in some facilities. Some facilities do not carry out PMs, no preventive maintenance. All they do is that they wait for systems to break down, then they react. So how do we resolve this issue? You need to have a structured PPM program supported by your management systems and your KPIs. Then moving on to the fifth possible and common problems in Nigeria is poor waste management. Poor waste management. What could be the cause? Improper waste handling, which obviously results to odors within the area. Pests will begin to come in, and then hygiene problems will set in. And how do we resolve this? Clear waste segregation, collection, and final disposal procedures. If they are well laid out, you see people just follow those processes. You segregate, you collect, you dispose. And finally, for the common problems in Nigeria is poor occupant awareness. Poor occupant awareness. What could be the cause of this? People may knowingly or unknowingly cause risk through improper building use. And what measures can you put in place to practically resolve this? Is awareness sections, campaigns. You put signage in places where that can pass information to people. You have induction sections. You cascade information to people, and you communicate. Okay? And like I mentioned, it is right to let people know that whatever you see in the facility that is not right, report it to the facility management team. Because early reporting prevents small problems from becoming expensive failures. So we'll move on quickly to now. We're now looking at who is responsible for a healthy building. Who is responsible for a healthy building? Now we'll begin to wind up. Let's quickly look at the responsibilities of the building stakeholders above. You have the owner, who is responsible for providing adequate resources, funding, and strategic direction. You have the facility manager, another bracket of team that is responsible for operating, maintaining, monitoring, and ensuring continuous building improvements. You have another set of people that are the contractors who deliver competent, safe, and compliant services. And the final set of people are the occupants who use the building responsibly and report problems promptly. Now, from the explanation of these different roles on the slide by the different stakeholders, it is evidently clear that building health is a shared responsibility. Every one of these sections need to play their own role. The owner will play his role by bringing funds. Facility manager will play his role by operating the facility. Contractors will play their role by delivering safe and compliant services. And the occupants will play their own role by ensuring that they use the facility responsibly and that they report issues where they see them. Okay? And with this, the building health will be guaranteed and it will be maintained because it's going to be a continuous process. Then moving on, we'll look at practical building health strategy. Practical strategies for maintaining building health are as follows. You inspect the building to know the condition of the building. You measure to check your levels of your temperature, your humidity, your energy, water levels, air qualities, and all the rest. Then you maintain. That's where maintenance comes in. Preventive maintenance, predictive care, and all the rest. Then you clean, which is very, very key when you want to talk about the health of a building. You maintain hygienic spaces and equipments. Then you control, where you use your BMS and other controls for automation appropriately. And then you educate. Education is where you teach occupants how to use the building correctly. How to use the building correctly. Finally, closing, we'll say a building does not become healthy because it is new. Once people move into a building, the work is not finished at all. That is when the real work begins. Facility management is about protecting people, assets, and the environment. So my final thoughts on this is, the real test of facility management is not simply whether the equipment is running or operating or working. The real test is, can the building guarantee its occupants health, safety, efficiency, and comfort? Those are the questions we should be asking. So as facility managers, this is food for thought for all of us. Thank you.
Combo, that was awesome. What a great quote to end on. I should have mentioned this in the well, first off, there's a lot of folks clamoring for your presentation on the chat and in the questions. So please, if you're able to share your presentation, I know a lot of folks on the line want to have access to it. And I should have mentioned
I'll
this.
do that.
Please. I should have mentioned this at the outset. I loved your comment that essentially that health is a journey, not a destination. Your line specifically is the work of the facility manager is continuous. And I wanted to just also mention there's a globally recognized healthy building leader actually wrote the book on healthy buildings out of Harvard, Joe Allen, who has often been has said that facility managers may have more impact on people's health than people's doctors. in many situations. And in a lot of respects, because of what you just outlined and the importance of what facility managers are measuring and managing on a daily basis, and we spend so much time in buildings, that it has cumulative effects. So really appreciate your comments today. I wanted to ask and maybe get some more clarification. I think you touched on this a bit, but you know, the idea that can a building that was designed and maybe even certified as a green healthy building, green or healthy building, can it become unhealthy after occupation?
Okay, thank you very much, Jason. The answer is straightforward. A building that was designed and certified green and healthy from the beginning can all of a sudden become unhealthy. And that is where operation comes in. If that building is not well operated and is not maintained, and your occupants do not play their own role, over time, the green building you thought was green and providing health to its occupants will all of a sudden become a monster. So the take home here is that the FM who operates the building plays a key role. They need to maintain the building. They need to engage occupants to play their own role. They need to ensure proper cleaning. They need to ensure accurate use of the BMS and control systems and ensure that the HVAC systems are not neglected. Everything that have to do with the building operating, the facility managers need to be on top of their game. With that, the building that was certified green can continue to maintain that status. But if all these things are missing, before you know it, the green building will no longer be able to provide health to the occupants of the building. I don't know if that answers the question, please.
No, I think that does, and it gets back to this idea that it's ever vigilant. We have to make sure that what we're doing with a building across any of these values is being maintained. And I think it's just so important. We know that this happens on the energy side, right? I was with the U.S. Green Building Council for almost 10 years, and we know that there's a reason that you do an energy audit periodically, so you can make sure that you're continuing to save energy. And I think it's even more complex on the health side because what's going on inside the building as it relates to indoor environmental quality and indoor air more specifically is so dynamic. One moment, it could be like an hour. You have a really, high quality air quality. And then maybe people start filing in and the CO2 goes way up. And so again, being able to track what's going on inside the building is increasingly important. So I really appreciate that. Yemi, I wanted to bring you back into the conversation, and I wanted to start off with something that Adetokunbo mentioned in his talk, and those who are responsible for a healthy building, right? He had that great slide that talked through all the different stakeholders who need to be part of ensuring that we have a healthy building. And since we have kind of both of your perspectives in play, this is a question for both of you, right? How do we make sure that the design community, the architects, and the facility management community are talking to each other in a way where that handoff is seamless, right? Maybe you've designed a really sound, healthy building, and that you're handing it off, and vice versa, right? That facility managers are involved and understand the various aspects of the design. So that's a question for both of you. How do we make sure that they're talking and coordinating? But I'll start with you, Yemi, for that question. How do we make sure that there's better coordination among those two communities?
Yes, so thank you, Jason, and fantastic presentation by Architect Adetokunbo. So in brief, what I would say is that, as with a healthy building and a green building or sustainable building, you want to come in and have a chariot at the beginning of the project to be able to have a stakeholder chariot where you already know that you're working from the end of the project right from the beginning. So the vision of the project is already in mind. Like I said earlier, it's not just something that is an afterthought, it's a design performance. So whether you're working just so that you're able to achieve sustainable green buildings, and then you also want to layer it with health and well-being parameters. Also to consider like the fact that you said you also need to work with the facility managers for the operations and the maintenance or during the life cycle of that building, which is very key when you're doing a sustainable building. So of course, I think the most important thing to do for anyone who is in the design space or in the construction space is to have that stakeholder chatter. Once you have your client say to you, oh, this is my vision, then from the beginning, you're able to bring in everybody on board. The designers are looking at what they need to do in terms of the matrix of the entire design configuration, externally, internally, health, well-being. You're looking at the site, you're looking at the indoor air quality, you're looking at the parameters across the various certification platforms, whether you're using lead BREEAM or well or edge, depending on what the end goal is. And then you're also in that same room, you also have the facility managers, who are the operation guys, they're the O&M guys. It's also important to mention that there are some certification protocols that you also just get for O&M. And I believe that is lead, where you just get the lead O&M, certification, which is also very vital. So you need to be able to have that. And I believe that once you start to kickstart with that in mind, it's from the design point. Someone like Actor that they talking about, who is a facilities manager, is able to advise from the beginning. Oh, once you put this in place, we are able to have about 50% savings on energy. We're able to have 10% savings on materiality. You're also looking at the numbers in terms of costing. You're doing what your life cycle assessment right at the beginning. I believe that is where facility management also becomes very juicy and very attractive to the owner of the building or the stakeholders, because it's a game of numbers. You're looking at the savings and the incentives that they have, and then of course by the time you tell the client that as a designer we need to put this, it's easy sell, because they will just buy into it very quickly, because they know that what they stand to benefit during the life cycle of the building.
Okay. Okay, so thanks very much. Yemi, you nailed it. Fortunately for me, I wear two caps in this contest. An architect as well as a facility manager. And the importance of having a facility manager to be with the team, especially at the design and construction stage, cannot be overemphasized. Um, the reason being that you're able to avoid costly operational mistakes at the design stage if you get the facility management involved in the reviews at that time. I'll tell you something. There's a project we're supposed to commence facility management operation recently. We awarded the contracts and we're supposed to start. But on getting to site, the first inspection, we found out that that building was not fit to operate. A lot of design errors, a lot of construction errors. If I tell you this is the 10 months, we're still trying to correct the mistakes in that building, and we've not been able to operate the building. So if, for example, they had the FMs to be part of the reviews, design reviews, development and building stage, I bet you these mistakes would have been avoided. This wasted 3 months with the resultant costs would have been avoided. So the need for having all stakeholders to start from the design stage can really not be overemphasized. Thank you.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Another quick question. I wanted to I think this is a quick one, Yemi, for you. One of the questions from the audience was, from a construction sequence, when exactly does healthy construction start? Is that long before in the design process, or maybe you want to answer that one in the Q&A? It's up to you.
Sorry, is that for me?
One of the questions, I'll call it out. I'm going to ask a different question, but there is a question in the Q&A. If you can maybe answer it, type the answer about when in the construction
I'll
process.
type a response to
it.
Yeah.
So my question to both of you is another one that I think is really important, and it's about transparency. So in the healthy building world, I think this is just a little bit more of a different dynamic than what you see in sustainable buildings. Is we talk a lot about making the invisible visible, right? So if you have a cup of water and it's dirty, hey, maybe I shouldn't drink that cup of water. You walk into a building, you don't know if the air is healthy to breathe. You don't know if it's going to be the building is going to be designed and operated to support your health. And so we've seen the rise of more opportunities to make, again, to make the invisible visible. Are there opportunities that you all see in buildings in Nigeria and elsewhere where health performance can be more visible to owners and occupants? Adetokunbo, do you want to go first?
Okay, if I pick the question very well, I think what will happen in that case will be the facility managers need to have a wider range of management, such that they have instruments to be able to measure the in-air quality. They have instruments to be able to measure temperature, because if you're not measuring all these things with right data, you cannot fill them with the normal human senses, like you talked about visibility. So you
Right.
need equipment to be able to get this data correctly and be able to act. So you do not necessarily need the medical team to come into the building to get this data for you. But if you have that wide range of understanding of how these parameters are measured, as facility managers, you should be able to take that on and act accordingly.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yemi, anything to add there? Okay. We have, I mean, we saw this on the energy side too, but there have been some policies in the US and other parts of the world where on the energy side, they've made energy disclosure a requirement. So buildings had to disclose what was going on in terms of their energy use. And just the mere act of requiring the disclosure of that energy use created energy savings. So essentially, the end users, the buildings, started to reduce energy because they knew at some point in the year they would have to disclose that energy. And I think the same is true of health. If you are, making those health metrics and indicators more visible, I think folks will move towards that. And we're seeing that in schools more and more here, where they are making indoor air quality more visible to students and teachers and parents. Again, it's starting to move the needle a little bit. So we're getting towards the tail end of here. I wanted to ask kind of a closing question of both of our speakers. If we were to look out a little bit, let's say maybe a short time horizon of 5 years, if there was one change that you could say, hey, with a click of your fingers, one change that you could create that you think would help accelerate healthy buildings, what would it be? So I'm interested in kind of like what's the one thing that you think could have the most influence if we were able to do it over the next 5 years? Could be a policy, could be a building practice, could be something related to education.
Okay, so from where I sit and from how far I've gone, I would say occupants' behavior is very, very key, because you can have all other factors correctly, and if you have poor occupants' behavior, all other factors will not work for you. Just imagine you running your AC and people are opening their windows. You cannot get the effect of the HVAC system. You have toilets and people are not using the toilets appropriately. You will get contaminations and all the rest will come in. So occupants' behavior is very, very key. Their actions and their inactions is very, very key. So if we're able to tweak their minds and hearts and get them operate and use the facility responsibly, use the equipment responsibly, we will be able to achieve what you just mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you. Yemi.
Yeah, I'd say that if I had the opportunity in 5 years, I would, as from the policy point of view, as a Nigerian, I would say we should go back to building, passively, how we used to build before, tropical architecture, I mean, it's something that used to be very predominant way back. On the now, we started to make all of our buildings really contemporary. I'd say policies should be in place and possibly incentives for people to be able to use locally refined materials. I mean, we have earth materials, we have wood materials, materials that we know that have, are produced locally, and also it helps to ensure that people live more healthy. I mean, with the modern materials, there's a lot of chemical inclusion, and it's not healthy as it were. So, from a policy standpoint, I'd say that would be my own requirement for the next 5 years, if it were possible by the government to introduce
I
that
love that.
policy.
I'm a policy person myself, Yemi. So I'm all about I always have a policy recommendation to make. So that's so awesome. I'm going to turn it over to Emmanuel here in a second. I just want to thank Yemi and Adetokunbo for their informative and just excellent presentations. You all were awesome. I was so honored to be here. And a couple of quick takeaways. I think Yemi said it well, that health must be intentional. And it needs to be considered from the earliest design decisions all the way throughout the life of the building. And I think if you do that, you realize health isn't a cost, but it's a catalyst for helping people be at their best. I think the point that Adetokunbo was making is that design is the beginning, but it's certainly not the end, right? Even the best designed building can become unhealthy if its systems are not being properly operated and maintained. Our organization does a lot of work with the International Facility Management Association, IFMA, and I know that there's probably some facility managers on the line. They do such important work as it relates to health because, as was said, if it's not being measured, it can't be managed. And so you've got to make sure that you're connecting those dots as it relates to monitoring performance and verification. And then last but not least, I just think it's important to underscore that, healthy buildings are a shared responsibility. The occupants, to the owners, to the facility managers, to the architects, everybody has a role to play. And that's a good thing. That means we all can make a difference. So I just want to thank everyone who was able to join us today. Have a wonderful afternoon. And Emmanuel, back over to you.
Very well. Thank you so much, Jason. I mean, we've had a good time, a lot of learning, a lot of unlearning, and a lot of new vistas and possibilities. I mean, for me, one thing I will never forget that you just said again is that it is a joint responsibility of everyone, designers, users, policymakers, and even us that have access to people that are part of the meeting, pre-conceiving or pre-briefing of a project, how small decisions, input can make a lot of difference on the long run, because we're not just looking at what is built, we're looking at what is built, what is being operated, and what it brings to the people, both finance and health. Thank you very much once again from the let me start by thanking the panelists, architect Adetokunbo Elempe. Yes. Thank you for joining us. On behalf of GBCN Directorate and the entire GBCN family, we want to say thank you for joining us. Then our dear architect Mama, architect Omoyemi Olayiwola, thank you for spending this afternoon with us. We've learned from your wealth of knowledge and insight. We hope to engage you guys further on LinkedIn and some of your posts. Please don't hold back to post and teach us more or show us more the things you could not show us fully in this your short time. Then, as well as our friend Jason, all the way from IWB High, thank you for honoring us. Thank you for coming to share your morning, of course, morning with you, afternoon with us. We look forward to having you maybe in person in Nigeria, in one of our sessions on our annual conference. Then to our dear director on the call also, Architect Usman, Engineer Usman, yes, I said Architect Usman. Thank you for joining. To everyone on the call, on behalf of Green Building Council Nigeria, thank you for joining us on this educational series. We look forward to bringing you, in days to come, weeks to come, please be on the lookout for our next knowledge series 5.1, where we get to discuss newer things and what's going to be what has been trending, and how we can all position ourselves to be part of the 21st century professionals. From Emmanuel, Lagos, Nigeria, I want to say thank you for joining the call. Looking forward to engaging with you. Please do well to also If you have feedback for us, please do it to send your feedback. Then again, the YouTube recording of this session is on YouTube. If you miss any part of the presentation, please do it to go back and watch it. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you feel. Again, just to mention again that this is being made possible by all of us. We are all partners, we are all members of this council, and together we can push the green building contest further globally. Thank you very much. Have a beautiful afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Actor Emmanuel. Thank you, the panelists. Thank you, everyone.
Yes,
Thank
and
you, everyone.
Sangita and President Waniko, thank you. I see you behind the scene also. Sangita is our COO. She's been working day and night to make this happen. Then our dear President Waniko, that didn't want me to call him and put him on the spot. President, we see you. Thank you very much. All right. Beautiful afternoon.
Thank you, everybody.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Yes, bye-bye. Thank you.